Welcome back to the Youth Ledger, the podcast where we break down global economics, policy, and leadership through real conversations with changemakers shaping our world. Today, I'm joined by Kesan Ucheya, an Obama-Chesky Voyager Scholar, Deloitte Strategy Analyst, and future Harvard MBA. We'll dive into how he leveraged education and global experiences to build a powerful leadership journey and what lessons young people can take from his path. Stick around, this is going to be a masterclass in ambition and impact. I hope you enjoy.
Hey, how's it going, man?
It's going well. How are you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you okay. How you can you hear me at work?
I can hear you. Yep.
Video's coming in. Sweet.
Alright, awesome.
Sweet, man. Great, man. It's great to meet you, man.
Great to meet you too. How are you doing today?
Work is starting to slow down, so the day's slowly coming to a close. But yeah, not bad at all. Not bad at all. Just trying to align on what I want to do after work today. So I think I might go to a boxing class or something, just something to get out the house. So we'll see.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
How you doing, man? Where are you based out of? Remind me?
Dallas, near Dallas. So,
Dallas. So
20
how
minutes
you
out.
enjoying Dallas?
hmm
Sweet.
Where are you from?
From New Jersey, but I'm
hmm
working in DC now. So
Oh.
originally from New Jersey, went to school down in North Carolina, and now moved up to DC. So been here going on 10-ish months, and enjoy it so far.
hmm
I love walkable cities, so it's great to be in a city like DC where it's diverse and walkable. And kind of like I said, I can just like after work figure out what I want to do after work, just walk outside and go
hmm
do it. So I enjoy that. So yeah, it's going pretty well.
That's awesome. Well, I had a few questions I prepared for you today. So whenever you're ready, I can go through them. We can just chat. hmm
Yeah, sure thing, man. We can chat, talk through whatever you'd like to talk through.
Awesome. So first of all, pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to talk to you. So maybe can you start by telling me and the audience a bit about your background and what drives your passions?
Yeah, so backgrounds and passions. I guess starting off with background,
Mm-hmm.
originally kind of like I touched on earlier, from New Jersey, was born into an immigrant household. So both my parents are Nigerian, and so kind of grew up in that household kind of grew up in that household, and had, I guess you could say, an interesting dynamic where my father worked in Nigeria, and so I lived primarily with my mom in the States, and so that was always an interesting dynamic, kind of going back and forth between Nigeria to come visit him and coming there, and things of that nature. So that was definitely formative in my earlier years. But yeah, kind of getting into like what drives my passion and things of that nature. I would first define my passion and say that a lot of that is instilled in helping low-income communities, especially when you look at it from an economic and business
Mm-hmm.
lens. Went to the University of North Carolina to study business, so got my education there and explored that passion area through UNC. And a lot of that really does stem from kind of like what I touched on earlier
Mm-hmm.
is those trips to Nigeria early on and being able to have that exposure where I'm living in a first world country, but frequently would visit a third world country and from a third world country. And so kind of seeing the disparities in living conditions and infrastructure that Nigeria had versus America was really what sparked that curiosity. And
Mm-hmm.
that's something that I realized that I gravitated towards in an educational sense, in the sense of like when looking at topics in school, things like imperialism would always catch my eye, where it's like Europeans, colonizing
Mm-hmm.
Africa and exploiting Africa, and how that relays onto the current state of Africa today. And things of that nature kind of just built on itself throughout my entire educational experience. And so getting into like college where you kind of have more free reign to explore those and more experiential avenues, that was huge. Like I touched on, went to University of North Carolina, studied business, and worked with an NC Growth, which was an economic development consultancy there. And so that was great for getting that kind of exposure into like economic development in that world. And later on, did some more volunteer work in Rwanda and South Africa, and happy to get into all those as well. I'm sure you have more questions, else I don't want to give too long of an
mm-hmm.
answer, but yeah, kind of sums it up.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. The University of North Carolina is a great school. I had a few friends who were seniors, they're about to go there. So they're all
Sweet,
very
sweet.
excited.
They should be.
So, speaking of education, you're quite the accomplished individual. I was looking at your LinkedIn. I believe you're about to go to the Harvard Business School. You.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Sweet.
I recognized the red color. I was like, where is that from?
Yeah, yeah.
and then also a Deloitte Strategy Analyst and an Obama-Chesky Voyager Scholar. So the question is what motivated you to pursue these paths, but I'm assuming that aligns with your previous answer, your passion for economic development and business.
Yeah. So I guess kind
Mm-hmm.
of doing more in depth with it. Much of that was driven by my interest in the intersectionality of impact in business. You think of business, you don't first think of like social impact and like what impact you can have. You're probably thinking of like, like JP Morgan, like big banks and like
Mm-hmm.
Blackstone buying up all the housing, real estate, and all that good stuff. So business definitely has that connotation off face value, but I do believe that by leveraging businesses and the private sector, you do have the potential to make real change. And so when I first joined North or UNC, my freshman year, met some people part of a program called the Luther Hodges program, and they're really dedicated towards students who want to work at the intersection of business and impact, and like really the intersectionality of like I guess cross sector is a better word for it, but that cross sector area between private and public sector. And so getting involved in that early on in my Carolina career was really helpful because it helped kind of reinforce those ideas that I had developed kind of during high school and during my upbringing, and helped me translate that to the actual world. And so NC Growth was, I think I mentioned earlier, the economic
Mm-hmm.
development consultant I worked from the sophomore year. Found that through that program, the Obama scholarship, found that through that program as well. And so kind of just having that interest and passion reinforced early on was really helpful because there are a lot of people, I think, in my opinion, who are interested and passionate in certain areas, especially when you get to like business and private sector, but you kind of get lost in like the private sector mumbo jumbo, and you
Mm-hmm.
kind of lose sight of those. But having that reinforced early was very helpful, and so like that was really a big motivator to for me, is finding those programs where it's dedicated towards bringing young people together, and our young change makers really together, and people who are aligned on the idea of using different industries to make impact. And so I remember applying to like the Obama-Chesky scholarship, and I was nervous because I was applying as a business major, and it's like when you think like an Obama-Chesky public service scholarship, you're not thinking like business majors, thinking
Mm-hmm.
like political science, healthcare. But got encouragement from that Luther Hodges program to apply to that, and so that was huge. And that kind of just carried that momentum honestly throughout my entire like professional undergraduate career of just finding opportunities and not really worrying about whether or not I think I would get in or anything of that nature. More so, this is the path the journey I want to take. I see resources or opportunities within these programs that can help me in my journey. So I'm going to apply, throw my application in, tell them who I am, what I'm passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah, that's what I've been trying to do too. Some advice I received from people: just take your shot. I mean,
Yeah,
you miss all the shots you don't take, and I think that's super cool though. So speaking about the Obama scholarship, I think a lot of people aren't aware about what it is. So for those of us who are not aware, could you explain a bit about it and what the application process is like?
yeah, of course. So it's actually a great point because I know that it is relatively new. My cohort was actually the inaugural cohort, so we were the very first class of Obama Chesky scholars. And so, essentially, at a high level, what the program is, it's the Obama-Chesky Voyager Scholarship. And what it's for is for students who, I want to say, it's for junior and seniors. Yeah, juniors and seniors who have interest in some sort of public or passion area, I guess you would say, have an interest in some sort of passion area, want to find an avenue to explore that further. And so, at a high level, that's what it's for. And so, what you get as perks of being part of the program is you get up to, I want to say, $25,000 a year for your junior and senior year in terms of just tuition and scholarships. You get a fully funded junior year summer voyage, is what it's called, which is essentially an opportunity where the Obama Foundation and Brian Chesky, who is the CEO of Airbnb, for context, they collaborate and they provide funding and resources for you to go on a summer voyage, which is where you get the opportunity to explore whatever issue area or passion area you have. So, my summer voyage spent that in LA and Rwanda. Happy to get more into that later on
Mm-hmm.
if relevant. But yeah, spent my summer in LA and Rwanda doing some work over there. And the last perk is you get 10 years of travel stipends. So that's after you graduate. And the whole idea is to allow Voyagers the opportunity to travel, connect with other people, build bridges in an international context. The world is ever it's ever shrinking. It's getting smaller and smaller, and so more people have different backgrounds are kind of butting heads and bumping up against each other. And so before you can look to solve issues with those people, you have to first understand them, is kind of the notion that they were built on. And so wanting the Voyagers to have those opportunities and the resources to meet different people of different backgrounds. And so at a high level, that's kind of what the program's about. Application process was pretty overall standard. There was a resume. I believe you submit your resume. I want to say your transcript and a couple essays. And so there was no interview process, but there was a video recording that you would do. So you'd just record a video on your own time and submit that with your application as well. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty standard. They go through, I know that, again, I was the inaugural cohort, so my application process was a little bit different than what it is today. I'm pretty sure nowadays they kind of have like a finalist round or something of that nature. But when I was applying, that wasn't a thing. But yeah, you apply your sophomore year, find out about it probably that summer, if not the fall. For me personally, I think it was around September of my junior years when I found out. But they're always changing deadlines and things around, so I'm not sure what they're up to now. But at a high level as well, that's how the application process looked like for me.
So as you said, when you first applied, it was a bit nervous, I imagine. Or
Yeah. Yeah. I was definitely nervous because, again, was applying from what I felt was a non-traditional background for the scope of the program. And I mean, it kind of was. Even when I got the scholarship, when looking at the other Voyagers and what they were up to and the things that they were involved in, a lot of people were pre-law, a lot of people were politics, a lot of people were healthcare, a lot of people were foreign services. And there was like a smaller subset of people who are more in the business economics realm, which was great to meet and connect with them. And also great from a standpoint of, I, to a degree, enjoy being in the minority in the sense that you have so much to learn from others, because I'm connecting now with people in industries that I never really touched or never really had much experience in. And that then grants me the avenue to learn more about what's going on there and how that intersects with me and my interest in avenues such as that. But it was definitely nervous. I was definitely nervous applying at first. I didn't want, my time to be wasted, so to speak, in the sense of like applying to a scholarship that I had no chance of getting. But kind of like what you said, you miss all the shots you don't take. I believe my application process was during the summer, yeah. So I had a little bit more spare time. So I was like, why not, give this my all. Worst case, I don't get it, and it's on to the next one. And luckily, it worked out for me.
That's so cool. So how has the scholarship had an impact on maybe your career so far, especially with the travel stipend you said, and leadership opportunities, maybe through some connections or?
Yeah, no, the scholarship has been huge. So I touched on it briefly before, but during my junior year summer, they fully funded my trip to LA and Rwanda to explore the issue of my choice, that being like impacting low income communities through the business economics realm. And so I came into it wanted to explore mainly through, I guess you could say, like a matrixed kind of thought process behind it, in the sense that I wanted to explore things on a bureaucratic and grassroots level. So looking at large organizations and what they're doing to tackle issues versus those on the ground people who are kind of doing the more hands-on work, and then also want to explore things from an international domestic lens. And so that's kind of what drove a lot of my decisioning in terms of the programs that I spent my summer working with. And so that's how I aligned on the program I worked with in LA. I worked for the county government over there, so that gave me a more bureaucratic domestic lens on their poverty alleviation initiative. So looking at preventative poverty measures, excuse me. It's primarily what I was doing over there, and that was great. And then also got to explore things on a grassroots international lens. Did some work in Rwanda, worked for an NGO over there that I found through connections with the Obama Foundation, and that was amazing. Very impactful work that they were doing. It was great to kind of be there in Rwanda in person, doing the hands-on work. Got to consult a handful of businesses, teach them classes on different concepts within business. I guess for a little bit of context as well, the organization I work with was dedicated towards reintegrating vulnerable youths into society, in the sense of they would target youths who had been through, say, alcohol addiction, or maybe dropped out, or maybe had gone through early pregnancy, that nature. Essentially anyone who had that straightforward pipeline of school, college, job interrupted, they targeted those students because they wanted to reintegrate them into society. And so the avenue they chose to do that was through both leadership development and also entrepreneurship. And so having them go from people who were seen as, a drug addict who has minimal value to society, to a pillar in their community who's helping, provide, be it products for groceries or hair care products or other products through entrepreneurship. And so that's like the main mission of the organization in Rwanda. And much of my work there was consulting a lot of those businesses, teaching classes to them, things of that nature. And so those were huge in my undergraduate journey and professional journey as well. And even right now, I'm in the talks of connecting with that same organization in Rwanda and trying to see what virtual opportunities they have for me to stay involved, because the work I was doing there was so impactful that they needed to go back. But I mean, of course, it's far away, and I now have a job and everything to make the trip. So didn't want to wait till I had that availability, and instead I'm trying to pursue opportunities to work with them virtually. But yeah, no, it's been huge on my career and things of that nature, because it was one of the most hands-on experiences I got to have to explore the issue area that I wanted to make impact in.
Absolutely. I was wondering, how is entrepreneurship, would you say, different in Rwanda as compared to here in the US?
Yeah, I'd say it's different. So a lot of it was focused on small business and small
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneurs. And I think a large difference is when you're looking at Rwanda, kind of like I touched on much earlier in this call. Infrastructure is lacking. More, to be blunt, is lacking. And so when you're looking at a lot of the solutions that you would look for in American small businesses and entrepreneurial ventures, excuse me, when you're looking at a lot of the solutions you're looking for in American entrepreneurial ventures, it differs in the sense that a lot of the basics aren't there, and so you have to get a little bit more creative or a little bit more inventive. And so, I guess for example, if you are a small business right now, let's say you start up a small business, you want to gain traction. The first thing every single person will tell you is create an Instagram, create a TikTok, create a Facebook, do social media marketing, things of that nature. And so going to Rwanda, some of the business had the same challenge of I want to engage more young people, this, that, the third. Uh, and that was my first thought of like, okay, like, do you have an Instagram? Do you have like a TikTok? Like you can make videos, things that people can share, interact with. And I'm missing the large barrier that most people in Rwanda, where I was at least, did not have a
Mm-hmm.
smartphone. So like Instagram's not going to be that useful if people can't, if your consumers aren't on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to meet your consumers where they're at and not just kind of copy and paste these first world American solutions
Mm-hmm.
to these third world more complicated issues. And so like that's a one example of how those it really differs when you're looking at entrepreneurship over there in Rwanda versus the States, and how you have to think about the solutions you're trying to solve, or problems you're trying to solve.
So how did you have to change some solutions? And also, how would you teach the youths about business? Would it be something about leadership first and then think of a business idea? Or what was the process like?
Yeah, so when I was teaching classes,
Mm-hmm.
me and the team would connect on different topics that we felt would be useful, and really just get into the weeds with that. So I taught a good bit about finances and like managing your own books, because again, a lot of these people they dropped out, they for some reason or another didn't complete their education, and so providing that education in terms of like finances and the numbers, and it's not just a matter of I collected money and I spent money and I collected money, and the money I collected is more than the money I spent. So like I'm profitable. Like there's more nuance and there's more details to that. And so that was interesting, especially because again, you have to make sure that you're meeting the audience where they're at. And so making sure that my information and classes I was teaching was digestible for them and relevant and applicable. And also a bit of a challenge for me because I've not ran a small business. So
Mm-hmm.
some of the stuff I have to go out and learn and make sure that I'm being accurate when I'm saying, because I'm speaking about things from an outside in perspective in terms of like what it takes to run a small business from a finance perspective. And so getting them more involved in like bookkeeping and the things and the activities related to that, that was definitely interesting.
Okay. No, I was just wondering because I think small businesses are very important. So, and especially here in the US and internationally. So, I was wondering how that
For
process would
sure.
be outside here because I've never really had that exposure. But that really sheds some light on it. So, thank you. So let me. My next question would be: speaking of finance, you've also interned at top firms like Ernst and Young and Deloitte. How do you see the role of consulting in driving these systematic changes, especially in more vulnerable areas? Do you think they could be doing more, change their perspectives, or?
Yeah, no, great question. It's a mixed bag. I mean, the issue, I guess you could say, not issue, I won't say issue. I would say they do a decent job. They of course could do more,
Mm-hmm.
but then at the end of the day, they are for-profit entities. Like they
Mm-hmm.
are trying to make money, and so like a lot of the nonprofits or vulnerable clients can't necessarily pay for their services, but they do typically have a good amount of pro bono work they have going on and things of that nature. I will say like the caveat of like the current administration and what they did with like USAID and like things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature definitely hit Deloitte heavy because I know that USA was like a big client of theirs, and I kind of came in and wanted to get more involved in like a lot of the international development work and opportunities they have at Deloitte. And so it kind of just sucks for me from the timings perspective, just because a lot of people or a lot of those opportunities kind of dried up. But yeah, like they definitely were there. I mean, like again, USAID was like a big client of Deloitte, and so there's a lot of impact to be had there. And there's a lot of project opportunities that work with clients who are international abroad that have more purpose and mission driven values. And just again, with the current administration kind of tightening things up on that end, it's definitely harder to get involved on those types of projects. But I mean, the GPS sector, while it did face a bit of a hit, it still has a handful of clients to
Mm-hmm.
where you're working to make impact in. Definitely could do better in terms of like smaller businesses or smaller entities, because but again, like there are for-profit businesses that are trying to make money. Smaller businesses don't necessarily have the money to pay for Deloitte services, but they do have a handful of pro bono work and things of that nature.
Do you know if smaller businesses tend to maybe reach out to smaller consulting firms? I'm just wondering how that would work. Or maybe is there some services, an NGO that offers consulting like services, maybe for small businesses that need them?
Yeah, no, great question. So, I mean, again, like the big firms generally
Mm-hmm.
have their own bono arms where they do small business consulting, but on a pro bono lens. So that definitely exists. But to answer your question, it was small business. Yeah, there's definitely like smaller firms that will specialize in like small business consulting. When I did my summer in LA, I actually tried to work with one. It just didn't pan out, unfortunately. But small business consulting is definitely like a thing and definitely vibrant in communities. There are some firms that are more specialized in small business consulting. There are some firms that are more so like smaller consulting firms. They're trying to get their legs under them, so they kind of do some of the more like small business consulting. But they definitely do have those avenues. But again, it is at the end of the day tough because they are a small business, only have limited resources,
Mm-hmm.
and even with a smaller consulting firm, they're still going to charge you money like straight up. And
Mm-hmm.
like when you're a small business, you don't always have the money to shell out for external consulting. But yeah, there's a lot of as well, like a lot of school programs as well. If you're a small business located near like located near a school, like a university, a lot of school programs will like kind of go into the community to look for business to consult for. I say that because I know that UNC-Chapel Hill had theirs. I was not unfortunately a part of them, but they had definitely had theirs where they had these clubs where students would be able to pair with MBA students, and they would get assigned like a small business in the local Chapel area, work with them to solve their problems. And so that's like another way where small businesses can get that kind of external consulting need met in
Mm-hmm.
a more manner.
Okay, that makes sense. I was just wondering because when you mentioned that they usually target larger customers because they are for profit, I was just wondering how the
Yeah.
small businesses get those services if possible. But that's good to hear that there are smaller places offering those services too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely could be more done, but there's definitely like an avenue to
Uh
getting your
huh.
needs met.
That's good. So my next question is that many people, including myself, would like to go follow your footsteps, maybe go to a great school like UNC, maybe go to Harvard, and then work at Deloitte and similar companies while still making impact. What would your advice be for this? Are there any specific opportunities, programs, or experiences that you would recommend?
Yeah, I would say two things. So, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, firstly, if you have a specific school program company, like if you're at Deloitte, your goal, you want to work at Deloitte for sure, or at least intern there and like fill it out. Then I would say like getting started early, getting on their email list. They oftentimes have like webinars, different sessions too that you can attend. That's a great way to get the ball rolling. But I'll say in a more general sense, if you're kind of undecided on what you want to do, but know you want the option of flexibility, I would say the biggest advice I can give is just do something, and it doesn't necessarily matter what it is. Like you can find out how it plugs in or how it fits later on. But like the biggest advice I'd say is just do something. Like it's not like I came into undergrad knowing that I wanted to be at Harvard in a couple of years or knowing that I want to be at Deloitte, but I knew that I wanted the option when I wanted to make those decisions. I knew that if I wanted to decide to give an MBA, I could choose amongst the top of the top schools, or if I wanted to working consulting full time. I can choose amongst the top firms, whatever I want. I wanted that agency of choice. And so the biggest thing that I did during my undergraduate career is I was always doing something, whether that was interning with NC Growth, whether I was being in LA, Rwanda, did internship with EY in Chicago, things of that nature. I was always just trying to find things to do that align with my passion, and would put me in a position where later on I knew that I could, if I wanted to, go into consulting. But I also did an IB internship in banking, so I could also, maybe try and leverage that influence. Or I could go into more nonprofit work, or I could go into more policy work, or I could string together a great law application, go to law school. And I knew that I had that optionality, which is mainly what I wanted. And if you're young and have time on your side, I would say that's the biggest advice is like do something, get involved in something, whether it's volunteering at something local, working for a corporation, doesn't always have to be something big or crazy. It can be starting your own thing, it can be doing a podcast, things of that nature. I would say always just trying to find something to do outside of just video games and like screwing around and all that good stuff. So that would be my biggest advice. If you're young, if you have time on your side, is find something to do. Doesn't have to be groundbreaking, doesn't have to cure cancer, doesn't have to be like some big brand name with McKinsey or Deloitte or whatever the case may be. Just finding something and all the cards will fall into pieces.
Sounds good. Thank you. um, so how do you think young professionals can also balance profit-driven work with impact-driven work? I know that's something you specialize in, that you mentioned in our meeting. And I just want to ask a bit more about that.
Yeah, great question. And I will be honest, it's definitely difficult in the sense that the two of them contradict each other. Like typically the profit-driven work comes at the expense of purpose or impact, and the impact-driven work typically doesn't get much money. And so I think that a great way to kind of go about things. Um, you can you can hop around the intersection, but I think that the best way to go about things is kind of getting experience on like both ends of the spectrum. If that makes sense. So like for example, I have experiences as private sector and corporate as like investment banking, which impact is somewhat limited. I mean, a lot of the work I did was with energy sustainability companies, so that was cool because it was kind of like impact in a sense, but also like at the end of the day, they are for profit, and there also are other things going on in the bank that are definitely not as impact driven. But got experience on that end, but also got experience on the other end of the spectrum in terms of working for county governments and nonprofit organizations. And so, really getting that experience on both ends of the spectrum gives you kind of like a steady diet or like a diverse diet of the opportunities available in both those areas. And that kind of helps you assess on where you think you're most well poised to make impact, whether you think maybe bureaucracy is more your avenue, or grassroots, or somewhere in between, or some third party. So yeah, that's really my big piece of advice, I'll say.
Okay, thank you. And my final question is, looking ahead, what do you hope to accomplish during maybe your MBA and beyond that? Is there anywhere you would like to get involved with, or?
Yeah, great question. The big area that I would love to get more involved with is, I would say, both international development and social entrepreneurship. And I kind of touched on it earlier in my call. Came into Deloitte hoping to do a lot of that work and kind of dried up when I got here, unfortunately. And so always looking for more avenues to explore those two areas. And so really, it's it's in flux just because grad school is still pretty far out, and my interests and passions kind of like change every day, even though they're driven by the same like ideologies. But I would definitely say right now, if I had to like say pick one, I would say for sure that my goal or hope is to, when I go in to get my MBA, to be able to meet some really passionate people and get more involved in social entrepreneurship. And hopefully, coming out of my MBA, we'll be working in some sort of social entrepreneurial venture, trying to solve or tackle some pertinent problem within marginalized communities. And yeah, that's really right now where I'd see it. Like I want to do that for at least a couple years post MBA, if not for like my career. But we'll see. Need to get more experience in that area. Like for all I know, I may decide that I want to do nonprofit consulting for like Briggs, which is another big impact consulting arm. But yeah, love Deloitte, love the work I'm doing here, but definitely see myself wanting to kind of make that flip for sure. At least for like a little bit, just to see what the kind of how the other half lives, so to speak, and kind of like what I said, on a broader scale, getting experience on both ends of the spectrum, but on a broader scale in the sense of would have worked for 3-ish years with Deloitte by the time I get my MBA. And so it'd be great to kind of work for like 2, 3, 4 years in like the startups, nonprofit space, see what that's like, and then more long term, I can kind of decide, do I want to long term be someone who's working at Deloitte in the impact space, or do I want to be someone who's working at like the top level of like these social entrepreneurial ventures?
Sounds great. I hope I'll see you maybe one day on the news helping people worldwide.
For sure, for sure.
That's all I had. Do you have any questions for me? If you would like.
Yeah, I guess my first question would be, first and only question really would be like, what inspired you to kind of start this podcast up? Like, how did this,
Hmm.
how did this inspiration for this podcast go, and how's it been going so far?
Absolutely. So really like economics and entrepreneurship as well, and also on an
Yeah,
international scale, stuff around the globe. So very similar stuff to be honest. But I just thought that a lot of young people aren't interested in this as much as other topics, maybe hot fields like AI and computer science, which are fantastic and fascinating. But
yeah,
more people, I think, need to explore this and see if they like it or not, or maybe just be a bit more educated on topics that are going on in the news and internationally. I thought a good way to maybe do that would start a podcast, meet with people who know more than me, see their opinions, and also give my opinion in a way, just to spread education.
yeah. No, no, that makes sense. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's great that you're getting started young, because kind of like I said, like it's always great to just do something,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if it's aligned with what you're interested in and passionate about. So I'm glad that you reached out.
Of
Sounds like
course.
this podcast is going pretty well so far.
Thank
And
you.
regardless of the result, whether it's a big hit or whether you just get two viewers on our call or our podcast, like just keep going at it, man. I think that starting young is definitely the biggest advantage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really the biggest advantage for sure. Is starting young, get it started early. I know a handful of people kind of get started a little bit later, and it's not a bad thing necessarily. But you get started later, you're just a step behind. So you're much earlier than I was. I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
thinking of any until I was 11th grade. So kudos to you, and best of luck with the podcast.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic talking to you. I learned quite a bit, so it
For
was
sure,
great.
for sure, man. Take care, and let me know when the podcast drops.
Of course, I will let you know. Uh,
Sweet.
have a good one then.
You as well.
Okay.
Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.